You know when someone says, that's just how we do things here, and the conversation kind of ends before it begins? It comes up all the time, whether it's about meetings, decision-making, or who gets a say. That thinking can really hold teams back. Which is why we've brought in Wade Kingsley today. He's the creative coach. So Wade helps teams get unstuck from exactly this kind of thinking. Whether it's shifting old habits, building curiosity, or asking better questions, he's all about helping people look at problems differently. Have I missed anything, Wade?
No, you've done that well. Hi, Lise.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So what we're getting into today, this is not about big flashy ideas or throwing out the rule book entirely. It's about small shifts in how we solve problems and also giving ourselves permission to try something new. So if you're someone who likes to ask, could we do this better? Or why are we even doing it like this? You'll want to stick around. Let's get into it, Wade. So I remember working on a campaign launch years ago, and I suggested a couple of new approaches, and someone literally laughed at me in the meeting. And they said, yeah, good luck with that. That is never going to happen. And I don't think it was even meant to be rude, but it was just accepted. And that really stuck with me that moment. So Wade, where do you think this default mindset comes from? Is it fear? Is it habit? Or is it just the way that workplaces and teams are wired?
It's a sprinkling from all of the above, I think, because depending on the culture, the management, the people in the team, what I find is it's never usually about a shortage of ideas. I think most people in organisations have ways they can fix problems. They understand how to solve a customer problem or an internal problem. It's the culture and the structure of the business. Is it set up to allow new ideas to come in? And if you think about it, most organisations reward outcomes. So they reward success. So did we sell enough? Are we hitting budget? Have we achieved our goal? Are we shipping this many product? Not many businesses reward risk. And when you think about that sort of notion of rewarding risk, what is incumbent in most organisations is a desire to keep the status quo, because everyone knows what the status quo looks like. We know how to do it. We're going to get remunerated or rewarded based on it. So the incentive to change, to do something different, doesn't actually exist in the framework of the business. So a lot of the businesses that I do work with, a lot of it starts with, we need to come up with some ideas, which is great. But the first place I go is this a culture that rewards risk? Is someone's head going to be bitten off for suggesting something? Or are people going to judge it too soon? Are they going to say things like, well, that's great, but that'll never work? Or we tried that once before. So mindset is one part of it, but mindset is an outcome for the structure and framework and culture of the business.
And it can so easily be shut down. That situation I was telling you about being laughed at, I mean, I wasn't going to recommend a new idea for at least another 6 or 12 months until I got my confidence back in a different situation.
And the scars remain.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Brene Brown talks about the creative scar. And the creative scar is when you're young, someone tells you you either are creative or you're not creative.
Okay.
And it could be just this micro moment. It could be just once when you showed someone a picture when you were 4. It could be handing in some homework or working on a group assignment. But usually in childhood is where it starts. And it's called a scar because we remember it. We can look at the scar and go, that's right, someone told me I can't. And that's the same in work environments. You know, if you've worked in an organisation and you've thought this would be a good idea, I'm going to offer that up. Even if now you're in a completely different environment with different management, your fear to bring up new ideas would be real because you've had an experience where you did it and it was slapped down. And that's the contrast, I think, with businesses that don't reward risk, they reward outcome. If you reward outcome, it's pretty clear what you're going to do and where you're going.
Yeah.
And we don't like risk in general terms. Risk is something we feel like even saying the word out loud sends the hairs on the back of the neck up for some people.
We don't like change.
We don't like change, yeah. And I think it's about kind of compartmentalizing the risk. No one wants to take a risk that's going to lose a business $1 million.
Yeah.
And that would be an unacceptable risk. But an acceptable risk is we always do this process the same way. What would happen if we change one step of the process? You don't have to change every single thing all at once, but maybe you just change one thing.
Yeah.
And let's see what that does. Because if it fails, we're okay with that failing because we already know we can go back to the way we did it. But you have to kind of have, the appetite for risk is one thing. But I'm always curious about businesses that actually decide to say risk is the most important thing we do, or we need to change the rules just because we want to change the rules.
I think that's really interesting because one person can say that, and I'm kind of drawing on my experience here being a leader and being in an organisation where I was trying to create change and going into these meetings or these brainstorms and there'd be a black hat.
Yep.
And I'd be like, oh, not you again. Like, really? Can we just think of these ideas and actually think about how to put them in motion, not think of all the ways they aren't going to work?
Yeah.
I know you've spoken to me before about how there's almost like these work types around dreamers, doers and doubters, how you work with organisations on that. Can you share a little bit more about that one?
Yeah. So one of the things I do for my job is I look at evidence-based research and I try and translate that into practical tools because there's a million resources around creative thinking, design thinking, innovation. There's no shortage of academic materials. The trouble is most people just do what they've done all the time, like what they've always done. And so when I was researching innovation cultures, the personality types came up to the surface and I keep thinking, do I ever remember being in a brainstorm or an ideation session where we weren't sort of cast accordingly, right? And the three that I kind of landed on, that I created, are called dreamers, doers and doubters. And it became clear to me that you actually need all three. So I think everyone would want to be the dreamer, right? But we all know those dreamers that exist in organisations. They're usually big picture, sometimes unrealistic, but they encourage and stimulate growth because they're thinking 10 steps ahead. So they're critical. But equally critical are the doubters. Now, it's not the doubter's job to say no in like the black hat example.
Oh, this is the one I was telling you about before. Yeah.
Yeah, and the black hat, again, is misinterpreted. From Edward de Bono, the black hat was just a note of caution. Someone in the room to offer perspective, right? It's not to shut things down. And I've seen so many businesses over a long period of time use that black hat example. It's like, oh, you be the black hat. And people think, oh, I just have to shut it down. No, you have to just add caution in the conversation. So we've got the dreamer skating along, going, we could do all these amazing things. The doubter's job is to bring reality into the picture. Okay, if we did that, what would happen? Do we feel like that's an acceptable risk? Where could we try it before we launch it? So it's not a negative, it's an important part of the process. And then doers, arguably the most important.
Love a doer.
Because they need to get shit done, right? They actually need to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got some good ideas. We've sort of stress tested it, but something has to happen to get it out of our heads and onto a page and out to the real world. So whenever I'm conducting a session, I give people that sort of test to say, here's some questions. Let's see where you sit. Are you a dreamer, a doer, a doubter? And then when we're casting a creative session, we try and make sure there's a good balance between all of them. Now, balance doesn't mean equal numbers. Yeah. Because usually the dreamer can do a lot of heavy lifting. Yeah. So the dreamer is probably going to go first. They're probably going to go, oh, I've got some ideas around this, that, and the other. But then you want to kind of back them up with a few doers and a few doubters around it.
We all want to be a dreamer, don't we?
We all do. And look, it's the sexy one, no question. I think, but I think if you can ask yourself seriously, am I the dreamer? Am I the person that's thinking without boundaries? Am I okay with risk? Am I okay with getting things wrong? Just remember you're 1/3 of the process. You're one part of it, because dreamers can dream and get nothing done. And a lot of them do. Then you've got the doers who have to underpin everything. But I know that being a doubter doesn't sound the sexiest person to be, but it's so critical. It's so critical if it's used in the right way. If it's used as a shutdown mechanism or a black hat in the sense that people often use black hat, then no. But if it's used as, okay, I hear where we want to go with this. Let me add some perspective. How can that kind of be shaped or work so we get it right? Then that's a constructive doubter.
And I guess you don't want to have a team that's made up of just one.
No.
Or the other, and you kind of want blends. I also was thinking about, as you were saying, that I probably lean into like more of a doer type, but there are situations where I have been a dreamer and a doubter as well. It's not like you're just one thing.
Yeah, and it can be situational. Yeah. So, you can have people over the length of their career start as a dreamer and end up as a doer. You can have people who start as a doer and get more confidence, become a dreamer. And these aren't kind of like, you're a dreamer, that's it, full stop. Yeah. It's about casting the ideation, casting the problem solving. So in some situations, like for me, I'm a dreamer in the workplace, but at home, I'm very much a doer.
Yeah.
Like I'm not the person that goes, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could put a new wall over here? I'm like, okay, how do we get that done? What's the steps involved? So
I'm the opposite.
You're the opposite, eh?
I'm a doer at work and a dreamer at home. Like, this would be a great idea if we built this fence. I have no idea how we're going to do it, but off we go.
Yeah. So hopefully you're married to a doubter who's not going to be a negative, but it's going to bring perspective into it. Okay, well, if we did that, this is what that would mean.
Exactly.
And yeah, look, it's situational depending on the culture. Some people start in one organisation and they feel like the organisation doesn't support the dreaming, so they retreat to being a doer or a doubter. Yeah. But they might go to another organisation and the culture encourages it, so they feel their dream tendencies sort of come out a bit more. And the dreaming, just to be clear too, it sounds the sexiest. What it really means is someone whose ability to think is not shackled by responsibility or the way we've always done it or any kind of constraint that is in the business as usual part of the business. So there are plenty of activities a business does that you don't need a dreamer because you need to kind of just get on and do stuff.
Yeah.
But when you think about innovation, solving problems, being able to tackle hard issues without an obvious solution, the dreamer's ability to think laterally and think outside the square is really important.
I'm reflecting on that as you speak because in a role I used to be in, I was trying to create some progress and problem solve and everything. And my reaction to creating change was like, here's an idea, let's do it. And I expected everyone to get on board, but not knowing about those different types and how everyone, I guess, processes change or wants to think differently. I started doing this exercise with teams called pre-mortem, which I'm sure you're really familiar with.
Yeah, I am.
For anyone who hasn't heard of it before, it's basically you get a team in a room and you go, here's what we're going to do. Here's this amazing change. I want you to tell me all the things that could go wrong with it.
Yep.
And so people can get that out.
Yeah.
And then we start like making plans to work on, okay, well, how would we prevent that?
Yeah. And I think one thing I love to add to that pre-mortem process myself is acceptable risk. So there are things we're going to do because we haven't done it before. Let's draw a line down the middle and go, what's unacceptable risk and what's acceptable risk? Unacceptable risk would be this will fall flat, we'll all lose our jobs, we lose all our customers, right? Anything that kind of feels like that could be too much risk to bite off. Acceptable risk could simply be we haven't done it before. So we don't actually know the outcome. We can kind of use our experience or evidence to think, well, maybe this will happen, but we don't actually know.
Yeah.
So an acceptable risk will be to try it in a small way. And this is one of those things that a pre-mortem process brings out is for people who are more doer mindset, when they hear something that's big, they retreat instantly because they go, oh, what could go wrong with that?
Yeah.
Again, that's not a problem. It's just how we're wired. What could go wrong with that is a perfectly legitimate thing to verbalize because we want to get those things out. Because sometimes when you get those things out, you go, well, you know, that could actually happen, but we're okay with that.
Yeah.
Actually, now you say it, that thing that could happen, we might move that to the unacceptable risk side because we wouldn't want that to happen. But you don't want the thinking to prevent the action. And in most of those scenarios, getting things out before you start, getting them up on a whiteboard or whatever you want to do is a good way to help mitigate the fear of doing something. Because the big challenge with people not instigating innovation or not fixing problems is the fear of the unknown. You can't say fear of outcome till it's been done. And it might have been done in a different industry. It might have been done 10 years earlier. You know, that's one of the common things, right? Oh, we did that before, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Well, times change, technology's changed, people have changed, maybe the culture's changed. So if you're thinking about how do we actually get this started, start by doing. Thinking is important, start by doing it in small ways and working on a way that you can do it with some acceptable risk.
I like to call everything an experiment now.
Yep.
And I think that gets people on board because they go, oh, well, it has an ending and then we can see if it worked collectively.
Correct.
And that word changes the people's appetite for it, I think.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about creative thinking at work, but it's one of those words that I think can also feel quite slippery. So like, does it mean being more visual? Is it strategic? Is it that I can create nice pictures or I have better ideas in a brainstorm? And from what I hear from a lot of people, sometimes it just gets written off entirely. Like we're not creative thinking. We're not a creative industry, especially in jobs that are, traditional or traditionally not creative.
Yeah.
But the kind of creativity we're talking about today is more like problem solving or curiosity, or maybe even thinking around corners. And honestly, some of the most creative thinkers I've worked with weren't in creative roles at all. They just saw things completely differently. And I would sit in meetings with them going, how did you come up with that? Or they were willing to try something new when no one else was.
Yeah.
So Wade, when you're working with teams, what does thinking differently actually look like? Like, can you give us a real example of teams doing it well, like even in a pretty traditional setting?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of years in the Nova radio environment. So when Nova launched back in 2000, so yes, I'm that old, it was 25 years ago, what was really important from the outset was the conditions for creativity were set.
Yeah.
So the conditions for creativity were every other radio station or radio brand is doing things this way, and the leaders would isolate the things. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't successful, because they actually were very successful at doing that. But we're here to be different. Like in our DNA is different. So we will try things even if they don't work. as long as we're being different about it. So the structure to set up those conditions for creativity were important. And what it meant was you were supported to make a lot of mistakes. But I was supported through the mistake-making process because I knew that there was no retribution for those mistakes. So what you learn is that muscle, right? You go, okay, well, I'm going to try more. And I think thinking differently in a workplace usually looks like the culture. I mean, you can sort of say culture's here and the action of thinking differently is there. But I find that organisations that do it well, it's so baked in, it almost feels wrong to do the normal thing. And that's depending on what industry you're in or depending on what your experience is. It can be scary to think of it like that. And I often look towards the leaders first to see if they're building that psychological safety. Are they building an environment where people are rewarding risk? You know, I've worked in an environment before where we had Fridays where we'd share the things that went wrong.
Yeah, great.
We called it F Up Friday. So if you've F'd up this week, let's share what you've done wrong.
Yeah.
And the F Up Friday thing, obviously it starts a bit timid because no one really wants to admit they've F'd up, right? So you look to the leaders to go first and the leaders will go, okay, well, I actually sent the text to the wrong person this week. Ha, 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 have a laugh.
Yeah.
But what you do over time is people start to understand, okay, it's okay if I've F'd up this week. Now, again, no one wants to stand up and go, I lost that $1 million account this week.
Yeah, so funny.
That's not what it's about. It's about saying that we do have some appetite for risk. So I think there's things that people can do in their business as usual, which is create structures for people to share failures or failing forward, as I like to say. What are some things that didn't work and why, and what can we learn from it? But also I think in terms of individuals, one of the best things you can do is work out what your risk tolerance is. So here's a good example. I feel very risky in business. I'm quite happy to take a punt on something and it doesn't work. That's fine by me. But you stand me next to the edge of a swimming pool and you say, Wade, jump in, and I'm as nervous as hell. And there's a inner conflict I have of like, I know if I jump in that pool, I'll be fine. I can swim, the water's fine. Like the danger is actually low. But when I isolate what it is I've got a problem with, it's the fear of lack of control. So for that 0.2 of a second I'm actually in the air before I hit the water, I don't like that feeling in my stomach where I'm not in control. I'm actually feeling like I'm not grounded. So now I know what my boundaries are with acceptable risk. If I feel like I'm in control of the risk, I'm good. So when I'm doing something from a business perspective, maybe I'm launching a new workshop product or something like that. I feel good about that because I'm grounded in the potential of the outcomes. But if I'm doing something that I feel like I'm not grounded, then that's a risk I won't take. So how it manifests in business is I'll make risky decisions where there's less money involved. You know, I can do this and if it doesn't work, I won't lose much. I'll make riskier decisions when it involves me giving an opinion or something or coming on a podcast because the consequence of getting that wrong for me are low. But I won't make sort of risky decisions where it affects my family's financial future. So running my own business, I have to think about, you know, I've got to pay bills and school fees, but I also want to be adventurous and creative. So I need to kind of separate those in my head and which tasks feel like, yep, I'm willing to take a risk there. I'm not willing to take a risk there.
What if you're an individual, like you're not a leader and you're sitting in an organization right now going, oh, everyone just loves the process or they just want to do things. And when I suggest new ideas, no one gets on board. And you're just feeling this like need to rock the boat slightly. In a good way.
In a good way. Yeah, and I think it's framing it correctly. I mean, people would get scared about rocking the boat. I think in general, like I'm okay with that. But
I love boat rockers.
Yeah, and you're a boat rocker too. Yeah,
great.
But I feel like, you know, just even the setup is kind of like, well, I'm going to be a boat rocker here. I'm going to deliberately or intentionally cause trouble. I'm going to shake things up.
The cat amongst the pigeons kind of situation, and then they just leave the room. You're like, what just happened?
But I think it's not about defining who you are by that. It's about saying, what step can I take that's in the best interest of the business, that maybe the business can't see the upside or the possibility yet, but I can. And it's being able to find an ally in that. So unless you're a 100% freelancer on your own, let's just say you work in a small team or a large team, doesn't matter. Where you want to go first is not to the boss with your big idea. You want to find an ally for that idea. So it's the classic kitchen conversation or whatever. It's like, oh, Lise, just thinking about that way we could do this a bit differently. What do you think? And what you want to find first is someone who's going to be supportive and constructive. So we ran into each other in the kitchen. I said this, you'd probably say something like, that sounds really interesting, but have you thought about X, Y, and Z? So there's a supportive part to that, which is like, I really like it. And there's a constructive part, which is think about these things. So once you've built up an ally, it becomes easier to start getting that conversation going and you feel more confident to pitch that idea around. If you're someone who doesn't feel confident in sharing that idea, it's about changing who you sell it to.
Okay.
The comedian's mantra is it's the same jokes, but change the audience. So if you're standing up and you're a hit in this city, but you're not hitting that one, it's not that your jokes are bad, it's the audience might need changing.
Yeah,
So
okay.
find a different audience to pitch your kind of idea to.
Oh, I love that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and maybe pitch it outside the company. Maybe pitch it to a friend who might know nothing about your industry, but what you're looking for is that secure, comfortable step. Okay, I've put myself out there by saying this out loud.
Yes.
I feel a bit nervous or anxious by doing it, but I've got some support and potentially some constructive idea. And you build that layer of skin. So the antidote to the creative scar we mentioned before is to build a callus, right? It's to thicken the skin up to take more rejection and tolerance. And if you think about anyone who's in creative industries, if you look at Steve Jobs, you look at Thomas Edison as an inventor, you look at anyone who has that kind of innovation built into who they are as a person, every one of them will tell you they've made a heap of mistakes.
Yeah.
But the single biggest difference is it doesn't stop them. They do not stop at a mistake. What a mistake is able to be categorized as in their mind is, I tried, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I love the quote from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
He said, every great advance has come from dreams and attempt. Every great advance from dreams and attempt. So the encouragement is to dream more and attempt more. And a lot of people walk around with great ideas in their head.
Yes.
And so they're doing the dreaming part,
Yeah.
but it's the attempting. If you can attempt more things, even in small ways, you're going to build up that callus and build up that courage to be more creative.
And it is courage, right? Like hearing you say that, I was thinking about when I was creating Learner, and it was an idea on the back of an envelope, and you were actually one of the first people I called to go, I've got this idea, I'm thinking of this. And you're right.
I said, oh, it's terrible,
oh,
don't
this
do
is
it.
the worst.
What
Please don't do it. Please
idea.
don't quit your day job.
Yeah, and then I went and registered Learner just so you couldn't do it.
And now you're one of its greatest supporters. And so you're right. You need these people around you to share what's in your head. Otherwise, you're walking around, floating around with ideas and nothing happens.
Yeah. How long did you have Learner in your head before you shared it with anyone?
Not that long, to be honest.
Okay, so you went straight out and started going,
I
think
would
I've got this.
say a couple of months.
Yeah. And who did you share it first with? Supportive sort of network?
Yeah. So people who worked in creative type industries, my husband, people who could be potential customers, just sounding out some problems they were having, etc.
Yeah.
And I read this great book once, which is, I guess it's about creative thinking and about asking better questions. It's called the Mum Test. We'll reference it in the notes. And it's Mom, it's American. But it's all about how you can get ideas out into the world, but make sure you're problem solving, not just being so wedded to your idea.
That's right.
I'm like, Wade, you will love this Vegemite sandwich.
Yep.
But Wade, you're hungry. What would help with that hunger right now? And asking these questions around the problem. Because I think equally you can be dreamers.
Yep.
You can be doers, etc. But you can't be so stuck on the idea that it's the only way forward.
Yeah, you should be stuck on what the solution is.
Yes.
So the solution to a problem I'm solving is this.
Yes.
And you may have a concept that solves that, and that's fine. But what will inevitably happen, and I couldn't think of an example across my entire career where the original thought has ended up with exactly 100% the execution, because it touches other things. It touches other people. It touches investors potentially. It touches customers in the first iteration, and then you've got to adapt.
Yeah.
So not being wedded to the actual concept is good. Be wedded to how you can solve the problem, because you're onto something, right? The insight that's driven you to solve that problem is going to be true because it's been marinating in your head and you've been able to progress it along. And I remember when you were talking to me early days about Learner, what I really bought into straight away was, you know how to solve this problem. And early days, the conceptual description of Learner is different to how it's turned out.
Yeah.
But the problem you're solving hasn't, right?
No.
And that's a big difference. And I like to do that a lot in my work is when you're working with a business and they are really clear on the problem they solve, and sometimes there's a shortage of ideas, so we do like an idea generation type session. Sometimes they've got ideas but need to put it into practice, so we do more of an implementation kind of session. The one thing that's true of all those things is where we started and where we end are always two different places. And it doesn't mean that what our original ideas are wrong. In fact, they can usually inform the end result, as it did for you with Learner. But what I find is the more malleable you are, and not fixed on this has to be the only way we solve this, really makes a huge difference when it comes to actually getting it live and getting it out in the world, because it will change. And I think that's the thing to accept. Even if right now you have the best idea in your world in your head as you listen to this, and you go, I know this is a great product. I know this is going to be amazing. Think of it flexibly. Think about what it is that makes it amazing and why it's important, and which bits you're prepared to go, you know what, I would die in a ditch on this bit, but that bit, look, I really love it, but maybe I could be open to tweaking that. Don't be fixed in how you come about it.
Yeah, because we all have problems at work. And sometimes I think we can get so stuck on the dreamers, doers, doubters, the black hatters, and the people involved in the problem. But if instead we all united around what the problem was, and that we all want a solution, because people don't like problems fundamentally.
Right. Yeah.
And if we can unite around attacking that, then no doubt we're going to get a better solution, rather than just blaming each other for being part of the problem.
Of course. And the variable in all these situations is ego. You know, if you've got a founder or a CEO and it's their idea and they're so attached to it, because you're not your idea. You are you, and your idea is separate, but sometimes they're so interlinked that you can't see yourself without it. Is if the ego is driving the agenda there, which is like, I just want my idea to go, that's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be, if you're working around that ego, a challenge to try and shape it to get it to its best product.
Why are we smiling at each other? Because we've both
I feel like we've both worked with people with massive egos, probably. That could be the answer. But
maybe once, maybe twice.
Maybe yes, a few times. But I think that it's a difficult path to navigate, but it doesn't mean you should give up. And, one thing that all these people in common, the people I've referenced already in this episode, but other inventors, other great creative minds, is they just don't give up. And it's not that they give up on a product. They just don't give up in solving the problem.
Yes, and that's the difference we're talking about here.
Yep.
So we've talked about what this mindset looks like and how open thinking can show up in everyday work, but actually shifting it in the moment, like especially if you're not the boss, which is what I was alluding to before, I think that's a really hard part. When the vibe overall is, this is just how we do it, it can feel quite risky to speak up. And I certainly felt that in that example I shared with you, even if you have got a better way. So how do you think, I guess, someone can challenge that kind of thinking without causing tension or making it a really big deal?
Yeah, it's a really big question, that one. And I think so much of it is situational. What you probably want to look for in an environment like that, as well as looking for allies who kind of help and support, is you kind of want to attach as much of your thinking to a real business outcome. And I'll give you an example. During COVID, sorry, I mentioned it. Does an alarm go off when you mention COVID? It feels
the
like
C word.
Yes. During COVID, the most remarkable thing happened was the lack of bureaucracy. So products had to switch, service offerings had to change, people had to adapt really quickly. But the big difference was, so did the CEOs. And what tends to happen in any innovation culture is the CEO or the C-suite are as much invested in switching that around as the people who have to deliver on it. So working from home is an example, right? Working from home is not a new thing. Working from home's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
But what used to happen was the perception of working from home was negative. Oh, Judy's working from home. I bet she's doing the dishes or some rubbish, right?
Not doing anything.
Not doing any
Kicking
work.
back.
Looking after the kid. I wonder if they're really productive or not. Until the CEOs had to work from home as well. And then all of a sudden we have far more flexible workplaces. So when you're trying to find a way around something like that, I think try and find what's in the best interest of the business, what solves a real business problem, attach it to a real goal, not a sort of artificial and manufactured one. And you want to start with something you feel like you can do. If you feel like you're going, this would be a really amazing for our company, if we just change this product, and you believe it, right? You really believe that. You might be right, but if the company isn't ready to change that because it doesn't meet the metrics or the system is built for other innovations or other ideas, it's not that one, is you're just going to be fighting it uphill. So put your energy into trying to solve a problem that's sitting in front of you, because what you'll then do is build confidence. Yep, see, look, I can do this. You'll build credibility internally. People go, oh, actually, that Judy, she's really good at coming up with ideas. Let's put her on this problem to tackle. And the third thing is you kind of negate some of the ego, because ego does dominate in a lot of business. And sometimes for good reason with founders. They need a bit of ego, a bit of, as you were out talking about learner, I mean, your ego low, I would say, ego less.
Thank
but
you.
confident.
This is a complimentary episode.
But you were confident, right? You were confident in, I feel
problem.
like I was confident in this problem. I feel like there's a problem. I'm confident I've got a solution that can solve it. But as you sit here today and you look back on your first write on the back of the envelope, learner would be similar in spirit, similar in nature. Maybe it's kind of similar in tech. But what you've done with it is very different.
True.
Yeah. And so because you're not attached to it as like, has to be done this way.
This is the concept.
Absolutely.
It makes me think of something else I've used in a brainstorm, which is called the 5 whys, which I know you know and you love. And so often people can go, I'm solving this problem, but it's a surface level problem. It's not the real problem. Yep. So for anyone who hasn't actually tried this before, fundamentally, and you can explain this way better than I can, my rundown is that you ask why 5 times.
Yes.
So Wade said to me, this is the problem, I would say why.
Yeah.
And he'd say because of X, Y, Z, and then I'd say why. And you'd go through that, and at the end, fundamentally, that's the core of the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah, and the analogy I use is you want to treat not the symptoms but the cause.
Yeah.
So what you're usually seeing in a problem, let's just make one up. Let's say you and I run an ice cream company.
Yeah.
I mean,
love
that sounds
it.
fun.
Yum.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
Awesome.
only in summer though.
We're eating all the profits too, just telling you. So we start an ice cream company and we don't have enough customers. We need to get more sales. So what most people usually do is ask the question is, how do we get more sales, right? But if you just ask that question and answer it, you're going to come up with maybe some good ideas around sales promotions or rewards or offers. But if you instead you say, why?
Yes.
Okay, so why, that's the first one. Why do we need more? Why is that a problem? Well, because we only really think about summer. Why is that a problem? Second why. Well, because most people eat ice cream in summer. Why? Why do most people eat ice cream in summer? Well, because they're trying to cool down. Why are people trying to cool down? Well, because it's refreshing and it's hot. Why do people want to do that? So we got to the 5th why.
Yeah.
Well, because people like to eat something kind of cold in their mouth when they're feeling really hot. So immediately we could go, okay, now we've got to that bit. Could we increase sales in locations where people are still hot? So would we be able to sell more ice creams near saunas? Would we be able to sell ice creams in heated environments? Is there a location in Australia we could be selling more?
Let's buy an ice cream truck.
Let's buy an ice cream truck and take it there. Yeah. So what it does is it kind of really gets you to drill down on that. I'm not necessarily saying selling ice cream at saunas is a good idea, by the way.
We're going to buy an ice cream truck after this, right?
I know. Well, I'll go to a sauna. So that's a coincidence.
Although it is winter, so we might have to go to Queensland.
but it just demonstrates the path of thinking.
Yeah.
And so the 5 whys are awesome. Another thing that I love to do, which really does kind of is such an easy thing to do, but people don't do in brainstorm or ideation sessions, is there's an invisible tension. And the invisible tension is between possibility and probability.
Tell me more about that.
What tends to happen is you go into like a brainstorm, right? And most brainstorms around the world look the same and they have for 80 years. People go into a room.
Don't you say brainstorming is bullshit?
I think it's bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll explain that in a minute. But most people go into these rooms and they look the same. There's a whiteboard or whatever, there's a screen, there's butcher's paper and Post-it notes. And someone at the front goes, right, we need to solve this problem. How do we get more sales? Give us your best ideas. No such thing as a bad idea, blah, 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 all that kind of bullshit. But what is unspoken in that environment is, are you in the moment dealing with possibilities or are you dealing with probabilities? Possibility mindset says we can come up with stuff and it's okay. It's just thinking. It doesn't cost us anything. I can come up with a silly idea about ice cream and saunas and I've just wasted 3 seconds by saying it.
Yeah.
I haven't invested any money in ice cream or buying saunas or finding out where saunas are. So that's just a thought. That's possible. So you want to divide up the session to come up with possibilities, and then you want to switch mode and actively call that out. Okay, everyone, that's enough possibilities. We've got heaps here. Now let's go to probability. And that's where someone in the room, usually a doer, would go, okay, so that ice cream sauna thing, let's try and unpick that a bit. How many saunas are there? Well, there's only about 6 in the local area. If we did, it would make a huge difference. Probably not. Okay, cool. So let's just park that idea. Let's go on to another idea. Because every idea is going to need usually some sort of legal opinion, practicality is going to come into it, budget, all the things you need to do. But when you start a brainstorming session and the possibility and the probability are constantly rolling around and mixed up, this is what it will sound like. I've got a great idea. Why don't we do this? Oh, that'll never work. I've got a great idea. Why don't we do this? We've tried that before. Oh, I've got a great idea. And all of a sudden, it's disaster, right? And we've all been in those situations. Well, like that person who laughed at you, right?
Yeah.
It's because what they were probably doing, without knowing who they are, is they were probably dealing in probability. Now, that's not to say that's wrong, but it's discouraging for you to hear probability when you're trying to get an idea out there.
Yeah.
And they're not yet finished with possibility. Because maybe they could go, well, hang on, wait a minute. So you're saying that, talk to me about it a bit more. Help me understand it a bit more because we're still in possibility mode.
Okay.
So the switch has to happen. So you shouldn't start every session with that interchange of probability and possibility.
Yeah.
Have a good section for possibility where anything is on the table. You know, and it's usually framed as no such thing as a bad idea. I mean, there are plenty of bad ideas, but what you want to do is encourage multiple possibilities.
Okay.
And then when you go, everyone switch, probability, what are some of the things now we think are probable and why? And it's not a yes or no, it's a prioritization. So the ice cream sauna idea, look, it's okay, but we don't think it's going to be a game changer. So let's move it down to priority number 10.
Yeah.
But this thing on priority number 1 about giving everyone free ice cream on a Tuesday, we really like that for these reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it becomes sorting rather than yes, no, and you're dealing with all the possibilities you've created rather than cutting them off before they have a chance to succeed.
I really like that because it appeals to the dreamers, doers and doubters in there, and they know that it's coming. They know that they can talk about it, but they can equally maybe get involved and throw out some ideas too.
Yeah, and just to stop down on doubters once more.
Yeah.
That's why doubters are important.
Yeah.
Because a dreamer will go, I can really picture this. Everyone sitting in a sauna eating an ice cream because they're hot. And the doer will go, can you take ice cream to the saunas? I'm not quite sure. How many saunas are there? So they're not negatives.
Yeah.
They're actually quite useful piece of information.
Yes.
And you still then at the end of that might make a decision that goes, you know what? We're going to go with it. Let's try this ice cream sauna thing with one sauna. But that's why those combination of personalities is really important. And you do need all of them and you need them in equal dose.
Yes. And then you call it an experiment.
Call it an experiment. Absolutely.
So Wade, we love to leave people with an out, which stands for one useful thing. What's, I guess, one tiny shift, whether it's like a question, a habit, a way of thinking, that people can try this week to start getting themselves or the people they work with out of this whole we've always done it this way trap?
Yeah, the we've always done it this way trap is a trap. And it's not saying it's wrong. We like to have things so binary in lives.
Yeah.
There might be a reason why that's actually the right thing to say. We tried, it didn't work. But don't let it die on the table. Like think of ways you could kind of change it or do it differently to make it work. One useful thing I'll leave you with is that you shouldn't start an ice cream parlor near a sauna. I don't think that's a good idea. In fact, I think I've already registered that domain, icecreamswithsaunas.com. No, I think it's about cultivating curiosity.
Okay.
We talked about rewarding risk. We've talked about possibility and probability. They're usually my kind of go-tos. But I think cultivating curiosity is something we haven't touched on, but I think it's probably the most important because curiosity is the engine room of creativity.
Okay.
And it's the engine room of problem solving because most people don't notice the problems. We just look at the end result.
Yeah.
We eat a meal and go, this is amazing. We didn't see all the steps that went into buying the produce or the supply chain or whatever. We just see the end result. But when you're cultivating curiosity in your organisation or in yourself, you're looking at the moments other people might have missed. And, you know, one of the most famous kind of sliding doors moments of all time was, of course, Netflix. So Netflix would not be here if Blockbuster didn't charge a $40 late fee. So Mark Randolph borrowed the DVD. He went to take it back and he got it late and it was $40. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when DVD places existed, but they used to charge late fees, right?
$40 is a lot of money.
It's like you could buy a Merc with that these days, right? It was a lot of money. And so in his mind, a lot of people would have seen that problem before, but he was curious about that problem. He went, well, hang on, why is it $40? And why does it have to be $40? And how, so why and then how could I avoid this in the future? And so tiny experiment, right? They worked out, could we mail DVDs to people? Yes, we could. That system works. So the whole industry, and we know the Blockbuster story and how it ends, and we know where Netflix are now, that sliding doors moment was because of curiosity. Yeah. Because he didn't just go, okay, I'm going to accept that, or go, gee, that's bad. I'm going to start a different DVD store with no late fees. He's decided to say, why is that a problem and how could I fix it? And that's curiosity at work.
You know, a lot of people will be listening to this episode going, I'm just not a creative person. I'm not a creative problem solver. But I think you can replace that C word with another one. That sounds ominous, doesn't it? And that is curiosity. So you might say, I'm not a creative person, but are you a curious person?
Yes.
And we all want to be curious and we all want to ask why.
Well, and we all are, right? We all are actually curious. And we know this because we were curious right from day dot. We asked lots of questions as kids. And if you're anything like my kids, it was like 77 questions a day. And most of the time as a parent, you're like, oh God, not more questions, please. But you realize over time how valuable those questions are. So think of curiosity as the engine room. It's the blood that gets the heart pumping in terms of creative thinking. If you can be more curious, you can notice more things, you can turn your mind to solving problems. That's just such a golden ticket for creative problem solving and innovation.
And the only question really to ask then is why?
Why?
Thank you very much for joining us
My
today.
pleasure.
Love that conversation. We're going to go and buy an ice cream truck.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
See you later.
See you at the sauna.